Hello friends! Welcome to a new Happy Learning video. As we all know, the prehistoric period is divided into three important periods: the Paleolithic, the Neolithic, and the Metal Age. And today we are going to learn about the Neolithic. It started 8,000 years before Christ with the discovery of cattle farming. The men and women of the Neolithic period were able to produce food by cultivating the land and domesticating animals. One could say that they were the first farmers of our history, or rather, our prehistory. As they had to look after the crops and animals, they constructed small villages and began to settle in them permanently, meaning they became sedentary, unlike the people of the Paleolithic period who were nomads because they were constantly travelling. The first Neolithic settlements were located in fertile lands, near rivers, because in this way they could access the water needed for both their crops as well as their animals to drink. You already know that water is vital for life. The first plants that were cultivated were grains, such as wheat, or pulses like chickpeas. But do you know which were the first animals to be domesticated? Well, it was dogs, goats, sheep, and pigs. During the Neolithic era, many interesting things were invented, such as ceramic and fabric. But the most important invention was the wheel. Today, in the 21st century, we still use the wheel for loads of different things, as you can see in these images.
Great! You've completed the video. Now continue the route with the reading card, the video game, and the activity.
The first thing we need to know is that our prehistory is divided into three different periods: Paleolithic, Neolithic, and the Metal Ages. The Paleolithic begins with the appearance of the first human beings and ends 8,000 years before Christ. During the Paleolithic period, people were nomads, meaning that they didn't live in one place. No, they were constantly on the move, in search of animals to hunt. As they were hunters and gatherers, they needed to follow the animals in order to capture them, and at the same time, they collected wild fruits they found on their way. They lived in tribes, in small groups formed by families, and they found refuge in caves where they would paint on the wall. These paintings were done with a mixture of charcoal, earth, animal fat, and water. Look, here are a few examples. The truth is, it's absolutely fascinating to think that these first paintings, these first artistic representations, were drawn thousands of years ago, don't you think? Both Paleolithic men and women wore animal skins, which they had hunted previously. And they used tools such as an axe and spears made out of stones, wood and bones, which they themselves carved. With the passing of time, or rather centuries, these first human beings became more and more intelligent, and they began to domesticate animals, such as dogs, goats, sheep and pigs. They also began to cultivate plants, which were then eaten. With the arrival of agriculture and farming, everything changed. Man stopped being a nomad and became sedentary, and the first villages were made. This is when the Paleolithic period ends and the Neolithic begins. The Neolithic started 8 million years before Christ, when we discovered agriculture and farming. And it's finished with the beginning of the Metal Ages. Men and women in the Neolithic produced food by cultivating the land and domesticating animals. We can say that they were the first farmers and agriculturalists of our history. Better yet, our prehistory. As they had to look after their crops and animals, they constructed small villages and began to settle in them permanently, meaning that they transformed into sedentary, not like the Paleolithic, who were nomads because they were moving constantly. The first Neolithic settlements were situated in very fertile lands, near rivers so they could access water easily, needed for their crops as well as allowing their animals to drink. You know how important water is in our life. The first plants that were cultivated were cereals such as wheat or pulses like chickpeas. But do you know which were the first animals to be domesticated? Well, it was dogs, sheep, goats, and pigs. During the Neolithic era, many interesting things were invented, such as ceramic and fabric. But the most important invention was the wheel. Everything became so easy for men and women in the Neolithic, especially when they started using metals. This is the point where the Neolithic ended and a new era in prehistory commenced. The Metal Ages, which commenced approximately 6,500 years BC and finished when the first written language was born. The first metal which was used was copper, then bronze, which is a mixture of copper and tin, and finally iron, which is a much more abundant mineral and therefore easier to find in nature. In order to mold these metals, they were melted at extremely high temperatures and transformed into the desired shape. This is how utensils like tools, weapons, and decorations were made. This process is called metallurgy. Through metallurgy, crafts and trade began. The metallurgists were the first specialized craftsmen, as the metallurgy is a very complex and difficult task which few knew how to do. The rise of agrarian production and the appearance of crafts caused bartering, that is, the exchange of products. This is when trade began. Trade, over time, made some villages grow in size, turning into cities. This then created large commercial and cultural exchange between these new cities, and new inventions such as sailboats and wagons used to transport goods were made. Trade also changed society by creating social classes, the rich and the poor, the powerful and the slaves. During the Metal Ages, people began questioning the mysteries of life, as well as death, and the first religious representations arose. Constructions called megaliths were created with large blocks of stone. Mega meaning large, and liths, stone. The simplest megalith was the menhir, a large stone reverted vertically into the ground. Dolmens were also constructed, such as the ones we see in these images.
The Metal Age ended with the appearance of writing 4,000 years before Christ.
And with this, prehistory comes to an end, but history commences.
Search us and subscribe to Happy Learning's YouTube channel.
The wheel was first seen on small clay tables, discovered in Mesopotamia. These tables represent a car with wheels and are more than 5,000 years old. The According to archaeologists, the wheel was invented in Mesopotamia over 6,000 years ago. But we don't know who the inventor was. Supposedly, the first wheel was invented after the first human beings used cylindrical tree trunks to move heavy things. Observing this, someone very intelligent must have thought that making a wooden circle with an axis, like current wheelbarrows, it would be much easier. And from then on, the first potter's wheel and cars appeared. Crafts were the first to use the wheel, and it made it easier and faster for potters to make their pots. Thanks to the potter's wheel. Here, we can see how two wheels and an axis help this craftsman endlessly. Through time, the wheel was also used in transport. Animals didn't have to carry heavy weights on their backs. Now, thanks to wheels, they pulled the cars and moved a lot more weight with less effort. And from then, the wheel has been an essential partner to human beings. Look! The number of wheels we can see around us. The truth is, this is such a cool invention, don't you think?
Great! You've completed the video. Now continue the route with the reading card, the video game, and the activity.
Money has been used for a very long time to buy all kinds of things, clothes or food. It is also used to go to the cinema or pay our teachers. Money today is essential for our society to function. Bookshops, restaurants, shopping centers. There are many companies that sell products that we can buy. There are also people like taxi drivers and hairdressers who don't sell us things but sell us their services, their work. Taxi drivers take us from one place to another, and hairdressers cut our hair and make us look beautiful. All this, of course, in exchange for money. All this buying and selling, this exchange of money, is called economics, and it is fundamental in understanding how the world works. That's why adults always talk about it, the economy. But did you know that money has not always existed? Thousands and thousands of years ago, in prehistoric times, people didn't use money because it hadn't even been invented yet. So, how did people buy clothes or food? Well, they used another method that still exists. It's called barter. And although it has a strange name, it's actually quite easy to understand. Bartering is simply when people exchange one thing for another without using money. For example, if a friend of yours has a piece of chewing gum and you exchange it for a piece of candy, you would have bartered. The exchange was done and money wasn't used. Simple, huh? Bartering is something that human beings have been doing for a very long time. It actually started in prehistoric times, during a period called Neolithic. It was then when human beings went from being nomadic to sedentary. Before, when they were nomads, to eat, they had to go from one place to another, hunting and looking for wild fruit. Later, when they discovered agriculture and farming, they were able to stay in villages as their food source was on their land, which made them sedentary. Their villages and towns, therefore gradually grew and began to produce more food than they could consume. So some people were able to dedicate their time to other skills, such as making crafts. But of course, artisans also have to eat. So they decided to exchange the things they had made, such as jars, vases, and pots, for the food produced by the farmers and herders. So that's how it all began. Bartering became a way of life. But as the years went by, villages became bigger and produced more and more things, making it even more difficult to trade them. How much wheat can a stone axe cost? And how many chickens does a jug cost? And how many pears can I exchange for 4 cows? It's getting complicated. Do you know how they solved this problem though? Very easily. They invented money. Now, a coin was worth the same as a pear, for example. If before a hen was exchanged for 10 pears, now it was exchanged for 10 coins. And if before a cow was exchanged for 50 pears, now it was exchanged for 50 coins. So instead of carrying a big bag of pears, they only had to carry a little bag of coins. This made shopping so much easier. But did you know that in the beginning, money was not coins and notes? No, in some places they used snail shells, in others precious metals, and in others salt. Yes, indeed, salt. Because salt was used to preserve food, and as they didn't have refrigerators, it was essential. Well, happy friends, so now you know what barter is and where money came from. But you have also seen that learning about economics is not that complicated, and that the best investment is, without a doubt, a good education.
Search us and subscribe to Happy Learning's YouTube channel.
Approximately 6 million years ago, the Earth underwent a significant temperature rise, and the animals that habited within it commenced a slow evolution in order to adapt themselves to these new conditions. We don't know for certain when, how or where, but at a given point, the first hominids appeared. The ancestors of the first men ever. Scientists call humanization the changes that primates experienced until they became human beings. This slow evolution made these primates stop being quadrupeds and turned into bipeds. This means that they went from walking on 4 limbs to just walking on 2 hind legs. So they changed their point of view. They started seeing everything from a higher perspective. Their brain was also developed. As you can see, it's got bigger and bigger, and they became much more intelligent. As time went on, they developed the capacity to communicate and improved until reaching the apparition of languages, with which they transmitted their knowledge throughout generations. They created tools and techniques, and with them, they were able to dominate the world. At some point during this whole evolution, the first human beings appeared. Scientists have created many classifications for the different hominids that existed. Let's get to know the most important ones. Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, and Homo sapiens sapiens. The Australopithecus is considered the first hominid and is situated between great primates and human beings. It was very small. It only measured 1 meter, 10 centimeters, and weighed 40 kilograms. It used tools like sticks and stones, and lived in Africa 3.5 million years ago, and disappeared 2.5 million years ago. Homo habilis is considered to be the first human being. It constructed tools in a conscious manner, and they talked to each other. Or they grunted at each other. We can't know. It measured 1 meter 59 centimeters and weighed 50 kilograms. It lived in Africa 2,300,000 years ago and disappeared 1,800,000 years ago. The Homo erectus mastered stone carving and made arms to hunt. It discovered fire and colonized Europe and Asia. It measured 1 meter 70 centimeters and weighed 60 kilograms. It lived 1,009,000 years ago and disappeared 400,000 years ago. Homo sapiens neanderthalensis first appeared in the Middle East, but also reached Europe. It measured 1 meter 65 centimeters and weighed 80 kilograms. They were the first ones to bury the dead and would make specialized tools like spears and axes to hunt. It lived 150,000 years ago and disappeared 35,000 years ago. The Homo sapiens sapiens lived 120,000 years ago. It measured 1 meter 70 centimeters and weighed 70 kilos. Its physical appearance and brain were the same as a contemporary human being and colonized America and Oceania. It was the first artist hominid and left behind samples of their art, like these cave paintings you can see in the images. Evolution and the origin of contemporary human being has arisen many debates and discussions. We recommend you investigate more about this subject so you reflect on it and bring up your own conclusions.
Search us and subscribe to Happy Learning's YouTube channel.